And welcome back. We were discussing the major battles of the Civil War, but now we have moved on to the outcomes and post-war of the Civil War. The North and South went to war April 1861. The northern states claimed that they wanted to secede from the Union, trying to form their own confederacy, as they ended up being called. The northern states, under the leadership of Abraham Lincoln, would not accept this. Abraham Lincoln, wanting to preserve the Union, thought this was unacceptable and was determined to stop this rebellion against the breakup of the Union. For 4 whole years, repeat that, 4. Battles involved in tens and thousands of loss of soldiers and innocent folk and horses were fought in Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Georgia. Naval battles were also fought off the coast of the Atlantic and on the Mississippi River. The single bloodiest battle throughout the whole war was on September 17, 1862, when 2 armies met at the Inchman Creek. It was awful, awful, awful. Thus, several months later, the war had ended, which was a great, 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 great thing. For within those 7 months, Emancipation Proclamation had been issued by President Lincoln himself. It freed all slaves living within Confederate states and authorized the recruit of African Americans in the Union Army, thus before the war had ended. Now the North was no longer fighting to just preserve the Union, but to end slavery, which was not really Lincoln's objective. But it had a good cause. As you know today, we are a diverse country, and it made us what we stand for today. Anyways, in Washington, President Lincoln was ready to begin the process of reconnaissance. Sorry, pardon. He never really got the chance, though, because less than a week after the South had surrendered and the Civil War had ended, he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, a Southerner who embittered the defeat of the South, thinking that he would help the South, but only enraged him more. The task would fall to Lincoln's vice president then, Andrew Johnson, a Southerner who favored quick and easy Reconstruction. Now, this Reconstruction, Johnson issued pardons that would restore the political rights of many Southerners by the end of 1865. Almost all former Confederate states had held conventions to repeal acts of secession and to abolish slavery. As a result, Republicans in Congress decided to implement their own vision of this Johnson's and Lincoln's idea of Reconstruction. They would divide the South into 5 military districts administered by Union generals who had been veterans, who are veterans now of the Civil War. They denied voting rights to anyone who refused their loyalty to keep the oath towards the Union. They strongly supported the rights of African Americans. President Johnson also tried to block many of these policies and was impeached for it, thus being a Southerner, thinking that it wasn't right for slaves to have any rights at all, even though they are human and they were treated as property. How sick it was, how sick. The vote fell short and he remained in office, but Congress would continue to wield this enormous power for the next 30 years. Just because of the impeachment of some guy who had some nerve to realize that slavery was over. Stubbornness. Sickening. The divisions of hatred that had led to the Civil War had not disappeared, though, after the fight had stopped. As Southern whites regained political power, Southern blacks suffered just as before, but not as badly, thank God. They had gained their freedom, but were prevented from joining any joined by any local laws or having any access to public facilities within the same rights as whites. They had gained the right to vote, but were denied the rights to go to the polls. the South had become segregated and would remain so for the next 100 years. They had just fought a 4-year war. Don't you think it's about time for this sickening stuff to end? The post-war Reconstruction process had begun with high ideals but collapsed in a sinkhole of corruption and racism. This failure, differed the struggle for equality for African Americans until the 20th century. That's ridiculous. We live in the 20th century now. What is this? Come on. When it would become a national thing, not just a Southern issue anymore, but nationally. Not internationally, nationally, but for the whole country. This thus concludes our today's report on the Civil War. I hope you have enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.